Hi everyone, it's Tox from crithappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. We're here today to take a look at a wildly successful Kickstarter called Euphoria. This is from Stonemaier Games and it's designed for 2 to 6 players. It's heavy worker placement in a world unlike you've ever probably been to before. If you're familiar with Stonemaier Games' first endeavor, which was Viticulture, the strategic game of winemaking, this is nothing like that. While it involves elements of worker placement, this is all about dystopian oppression, and it is harsh on the oppressed. When we first saw this game, it was during its Kickstarter campaign, and we did a preview on it, which we'll put a link to in the video description below and an annotation here in the video. You can check it out. I highly suggest you do. Not much has changed in the rules since then, although there is one major thing that I'm going to be pointing out, which I don't really feel was that good of a change, but I can understand why it was done. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But this is probably one of the most beautiful games you will ever get your hands on, if not the most beautiful game. But that being said, this isn't for everyone. The basic concept inside of Euphoria is there's 4 different factions. There are Euphorians, there are Icarites, which are up in the clouds, there are Wastelanders, and there are Subterraneans. And they're all in this ecosphere of pushing and pulling resources from each other. They all operate around the concept of artifact markets, and the way you win the game is by placing your authority tokens onto different areas of the game. Some of them may be by placing them onto markets that you help build, which are these upside down construction sites. Some of them may be by placing them into the actual territories themselves, and some of them may even be placing them onto recruit cards that you own and that you control. But the idea is that you're going to be using recruits to give you additional powers that will kind of mold or shape your strategy into using some areas more than others. Now, the interesting thing about Euphoria is there are no worker meeples. While you can see on the board there are tons of little bits and chits and pieces, the workers are actually your dice, and the value of the worker really matters in this game. If I start the game with 2 workers and I roll them, their value is what's going to determine how smart they are, or their knowledge. In this case, I rolled an 11. I'm the purple player. My knowledge is a 5, which you'll see over here on this track. The problem with that is 11 and 5 is 16. And that means that my workers have realized that they're going to be oppressed, which means that I'm going to have to lose a worker. I would actually have to put one back in the supply, and I'm stuck with only 1 worker. So managing your knowledge track is very, very important. The lower the knowledge of your workers, basically the more oppressed they are, the more you can use them in different spaces, or the more of them you have to use. The other main resource aside from knowledge is going to be your morale. Your morale is in the upper side here with the hearts. The morale is something that is going to determine your hand size, and your hand size is going to be made up of these artifact cards. These artifact cards are what you're going to be discarding to help you put your authority tokens out into different areas along the world of Euphoria. Now, there are a lot of different things that happen based on the knowledge of your workers. One of the most interesting is, let's say I had that 5 worker and I wanted to get some energy. If I went here to the generator, the values are 1 to 4, I get an energy and I move up the allegiance track of the Euphorians. If the value is 5 to 8, I get an authority and lose a knowledge, so that would be good for me since I need to lose my knowledge here. If it's 9 plus, then I would get 2 energy and gain a knowledge. Now, you may be saying, how are you going to roll a 9 plus on a D6? You don't. What happens is when people place a worker in here, they stay there. So my 5 value worker would generate me a energy and lose 1 knowledge. If an opponent then came in with a 5 of their own, they would not gain 1 energy and lose 1 knowledge because the value of all the workers at the generator is now 10. So the 10 would push them into the 9 plus category, and they would actually gain 2 energy and gain a knowledge. So the value of your workers plays a big impact into the types of resources that you can generate and how you're going to then use those resources. Now, there's a lot of different bits in this game, but they are the most beautiful bits you will ever see. This stone is actually really heavy stone. The gold is gold flake heavy bricks, and they are metal. If you were to take them and roll them together, they feel like gold bricks. And then the clay is just that. The clay looks like stone and it's chipped and carved. I literally could probably play with the components from this game in my hands all day long and not ever even play a game. They're that good. The wooden meeple pieces are great. They're very colorful. They're very bright. And in fact, in my opinion, this game uses one of the most interesting resource types. While you have food and water and energy and clay and stone and brick and gold, you also have this green, which is called bliss. And the idea that these Icarites who are up in the clouds who use bliss and excitement as a resource is just really cool. Now, this is a game of oppression, and while it sounds like we're just placing workers and generating resources and generating points, again, the way you win is by placing these authority tokens. And the easiest way to place an authority token is to build on these construction sites. There's going to be multiple different artifact markets here, or markets that you can put out in the game. So every game you put 6 out, and every game is going to be different. The problem is that if you don't help build these, you're going to get really oppressed really quickly. So for an example, we'll flip this one over. Let's say I help build this. When you flip them over, you have resources down the left-hand side of what it takes to build them. That scales based on the number of players in the game. Then you would move it over so that you can see an ability. So if I were to put a worker there, I would have to pay the resources involved, in this case 4 food and a gold, and that would let me place an authority token in the wasteland area if I paid that 4 food and a gold. However, what you'll see here, this is the Academy of Mandatory Equality, and it says that you may not use your recruits' special abilities if you did not place a resource or a commodity to help build this market. So if in a 6-player game, myself and the person to my left are the only people that help build this, the other 4 people who are involved in the game can no longer use their recruit's special abilities, and that's extremely powerful. When we first played this game, and it was the Kickstarter version of it, that actually had people getting up and walking away from the table because there were so harsh penalties for not getting involved with building these markets and making the world of Euphoria a better place. What I have found is that since the Kickstarter has gone through, they've actually changed that rule. You are now, if you did not build on the artifact market and help to create this market, what happens is there are ways that you can add a token to that later on in the game. Now, I don't personally like that. It's something that I feel is a bad change because yes, I want people to have fun playing games, but the idea of a dystopian, steampunk theme, just heavy oppression universe, I don't think someone should have a second chance to get in on something like that. That's just my opinion. And we've played a lot of games of this where you're not allowed to place a token on one of those markets. And what it really does is it changes your strategy. Yes, it oppresses you. Yes, it puts you in a position of having a hard time to do something in the game. But it also forces you to really focus on building other markets to make sure your opponents are just as oppressed as you. Now, some of these are a lot harsher than others. For example, the one we rolled over basically negates your recruit's special abilities. There are some that are as simple as if you roll a 3 or a 5, then you lose a specific commodity. That's not as painful as losing your recruits, but that's the risk you take in this type of society. Now, I totally understand why they did it. There's some people who just aren't going to have a fun time being put in a position of, oh my goodness, I just lost a quarter of my play area, or oh my goodness, I just lost a huge ability that I need to be able to do something with. But I, again, really like that. Now, that rule is very flexible, so while the rule book says that that's the way it should be played, you can play it the way it was originally designed when the Kickstarter campaign was going on, and I personally prefer it that way. I wouldn't have changed it, but it's just my opinion on it. The other thing that changed, which is really big, was the knowledge. In the original Kickstarter version we got, the knowledge was an 18 threshold. So if you rolled 18 or greater, then you would lose a worker. Now it's 16 or greater, and it happens a lot more. That's a change I love because it really makes you manage your workers. You only at most will ever have 4 dice or 4 workers in a game. So having 2 dice and rolling 2 6s for 12 means you're going to have to keep your knowledge low. So you really have to focus much more on managing that track in the final published version than you did in the Kickstarter copy, and I really enjoyed that. Overall, I think Euphoria, for me, is a beautiful, wonderful game and a great experience. But it is not for everyone. There are people that are going to sit down and play this game, whether you play the harsh way and you're not allowed to add tokens to a market that's been constructed already, or whether you play casually and allow people to go ahead and add those tokens. There are going to be people who just don't want anything to do with that type of game. I personally think it's very unique because it takes something that's normally a put down workers, get resources, and gain benefits from it, and puts a twist on it because now you're not so much gaining benefits for you, but oppressing your opponents. Now, normally that wouldn't sound cool, but when you mix it with this type of theme, it really does pull itself off really, really well. So, I will say at the end of the day that I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with both the Kickstarter and our backed final copy of Euphoria, but I would highly suggest anyone who's interested in this for their gaming group to double check what your gaming group's attitude and style is towards this type of game. But in the long run, the worst thing that can happen is you buy a game that has some amazing, beautiful bits that can be used in almost any type of scenario. We've enjoyed Euphoria. We hope you have too. We'd love to hear your opinions. Feel free to leave your comments below in the YouTube channel. Of course, you can join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, or you can find us at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope you enjoy all of your oppressed times inside the world of Euphoria. Thanks so much for watching. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.